Guys, and welcome to this video. Today we're going to be talking about the updated information on Returnal and its PC port. The PC port has been given a confirmed date for February the 15th, 2023. It has also been announced the PC features and requirements. Now let's get straight into the features and the requirements with the features first. The game is supporting a frame rate counter which will show in-game performance metric including the FPS counter, a gauge for GPU and CPU usage, and a latency tracker. This is very nice to have because sometimes MSI Afterburner may not work with a game, so it's nice to have an in-game counter also, and I think that's a very nice PC-centric feature, and it does show that the developer is paying attention to the PC platform. Very nice and well done. The game also supports ultra-wide 21:9 and super ultra-wide, which is 32:9 aspects ratio, which is excellent, right? Continuing on, the game is also going to be supporting ray tracing. It is supporting ray trace reflections and shadows. I believe the shadows are already on the PlayStation, so that's great. For those of you who are wondering about performance, the game is supporting multiple upscaling technologies. It is supporting NVIDIA DLSS, NVIDIA NIS, and AMD FSR2. FSR covers all components, so it's open source. So even if you have an Intel Arc A770 or AMD GPU or an older GTX card, you have AMD FSR 2.0. And at higher resolutions, it's very good. So if you're aiming at 1440p and higher, so 1440p, 800p, 4K, it works very well, and it's not AMD FSR 1. It is FSR 2, so it's a temporal upscaler that uses information on the previous frames. Very similar to DLSS, and it's very good, so don't be too afraid to use it. It is there in the game. Other things it supports, not really too important, but as you can see, it supports the 3D audio and so forth, right? This is some of the pre-order bonuses that you get. I don't recommend pre-ordering ever, House of Biscuit rules. So these are the old system requirements. I wouldn't take too much to this because the PlayStation blog has updated these. Now, this is just confirming the previous supporting features. This is a WCCF Tech article, so I did double check to make sure that this was correct. So they have confirmed, again, DLSS, NIS, FSR, and the ray tracing. Now, if we come over to the PlayStation blog, this is a PlayStation blog that was posted, I believe, today, and it was updated by Michael Havery. Sorry if I butchered your name, I do apologize, right? And he's confirming all the PC support, and most importantly, he has specs. So this is actually really nice. They have done a very good chart compared to Steam. As you could see here, they have 720p 60 fps, 1080p 60 fps, 1080p 60 fps at high, 4K 60 fps at epic, 4K 60s plus ray tracing at epic. So all of these are going to be covered, and we're going to start with the minimum. So this is for 720p 60 fps low settings. The GPU that is recommended is the ever popular GTX 1060 and the AMD Radeon RX 580, both of which are very old cards, over 6 years old now. And they have a very modest CPU requirement, a i5 6400 or a Ryzen 5 1500X. That's a first generation Ryzen. So the single core performance is relatively the same between them. However, the Ryzen does have the big advantage of multi-threading. The RAM requirements are only 16 gigabytes at the minimum, right? This is for minimum and lower end specs, right? And they are recommending 60 gigabytes of hard disk drive for minimum, but they are saying that SSD is recommended. This is also in the notes too, SSD recommended, right? So now moving up to 1080p medium settings, we do see a bump up in what you need to run the game. So they're going from a 1060 to a 1070. That's a relatively big jump. Now this is the Tech Power performance chart. It's very useful. Everyone uses it when they're comparing stuff. So as you could see here, if we come down to the 1070, right, it's a pretty old card too, and it's 1660 R9 Fury, GTX 1060, it's about 25% faster. So all of these cards would perform the same. So they are saying that the 1070, which is similar to the GTX, the RTX 3050, 1650 Super, no, not six. Well, yeah, 1650 Super is actually almost on par with it. The 1650 Super, when you overclock, it's about 85% usually, because I do have a 1650 Super, and when you do overclock them and the VRAM is not bottleneck, they usually catch up, but it's a bit slower, right? So the 1070 really being the medium settings, 1080p, 60 FPS, right? And they do jump up in the core requirements for the amount of cores and the power of the cores. So they go up to an Intel Core i5-8400, which is a 6-core, and they jump up from 4 cores on the Ryzen to the Ryzen 5 2600. So they're going up to 6 cores. Now, the Intel does not have hyper-threading, so usually the Ryzen performs a little better when it's a very CPU-demanding game like Red Dead Redemption or Shadow of the Tomb Raider. So I think most people should be fine if you are rocking something like the Ryzen 5 3600, somewhere around there, That's a very normal CPU. The Core i5 10400, the 10400F, the 12400F, those are very, very common CPUs, and a lot of people on the Steam hardware survey do have 6 cores, 12 threads. So 1080p, medium setting, 60 FPS, that's what you need for it. Now, 1080p, high setting, 60 FPS, we do see a significant bump up in terms of power. We are seeing they are recommended an RTX 2070 Super. And now, for the NVIDIA, going from a 1070 to a 2070 Super in rasterization is like going from a 1070 to a 1080 Ti, right? So there's a big jump in rasterization there. There's even a bigger jump on AMD, because they are recommending the AMD Radeon RX 6700 XT. The 6700 XT is even stronger than the 2070 Super. It's about 20%, and we're going to see that. So let's just take a back step here. And this is the 6700 XT. This is what they are recommending for 1080p, high settings, 60 FPS. So the game seems to be pretty demanding. As you could see, it's stronger than a 1080 Ti by about 15–20%, and it's a very beefy requirement for 1080p. We don't know if this is factoring ray tracing, and we also don't know how demanding the game is on VRAM. The CPU requirements also goes up again, because they go from Intel i5 8400 to the 8700, which is a 6-core 12-thread, and the Ryzen 7 2700X, which is an 8-core 16-thread. The RAM requirements are all the same on the lower end here at 1080p and lower at 16 gigabytes, and they're all recommending SSD, 60 gigabytes of SSD space. Now, this is very, very interesting to see that as we go higher in settings, they are increasing the rasterization and core requirements. So we don't know how demanding the game will be on a CPU and how demanding it will be on the single core performance. So that remains to be seen, but it seems that you need a fairly competent CPU, preferably something with 6 cores, 12 threads, and the GPU requirement for 1080p is quite steep with the 6700 XT, because the 6700T is a very beefy card. Now let's get into 4K 60 FPS epic settings. This is recommended for the NVIDIA RTX 3080 10GB and the Radeon RX 6800 XT 16GB. They also recommended the Ryzen 7 3700X. So I guess based on those specs, my PC should be fine, because I do rock a 3700X, 32GB of RAM, and a 6800 XT. So they're saying that's good for 4K 60 FPS epic settings. So that's a pretty hefty PC. Anybody who's rocking that should be fine, tweaking your settings there. Again, this is 4K 60 FPS epic settings, so pay attention to that. 4K gamers, they usually rock good hardware unless you're doing resolution scaling. So again, the game does support FSR 2.0 and NVIDIA DLSS. So those are good things. So I would recommend you turn those on, especially at higher resolutions. For ray tracing now, they are getting into the very beefy specs. They're recommending the RTX 3080 Ti 12GB and the RX 6950 XT. The 6950 XT is actually quite a bit further in ray tracing than the 3080 Ti. The 6950 XT and the 6900 XT and the 6800 XT all have very similar ray tracing, and the ray tracing is basically about a 3070. RTX 3070, they all ray trace fairly the same. And AMD at the high end does not ray trace well, but the 6950 XT is not priced at a 3080 Ti. A 3080 Ti is usually like $800-900, and it doesn't make sense to buy with the RTX 4070 Ti out on the market. Whereas the Radeon 6950 XT is actually down to like $600-700 on sale with rebates at times. Now, the Intel CPU requirements go up to the 11900K, which is an 8-core 16-thread, and the Ryzen goes up to a Ryzen 9 5900X, which is a 12-core 24-thread. Both are modern CPUs with very high IPC, and obviously they don't have IPC as strong as the new 7700Xs and the new 13th gen from Intel. But again, these are very competent parts. So, and given that they are targeting ray tracing, the game will be fairly CPU demanding with ray tracing on. Overall, what I think about the specs, it's a good chart. I think most people should be able to run the game if they evaluate your settings. Now, if you're running the 1060, 720p 60 FPS, again, it's a new game. It's most likely going to be very demanding as it doesn't target older gen hardware. I believe this is not on the PS4, it's only on the PS5. So again, current generation games demanding hardware. Now, as for people running 1080p 60 FPS with a 1070 or 5600 XT, again, most people should be able to get 60 FPS in the averages. Your 1% lows may vary, but given that they already said medium settings, it's there. It's there. Hopefully you'll be fine, right? So let's just look at one of the more popular cards that are out, which is the RTX 3060. I want to show this off a little bit here. I think this card should be really fine at the 1080p 60 FPS mark, because the reason I want to make this recommendation is that a lot of people already have this card. If you look at the Steam hardware survey, I believe it's in the top 10 cards, and it is stronger than the 2070 Super, and it's much stronger than a 1070. So you should be more than fine with this at 1080p. Now, the other card I want to recommend if you are considering upgrading your PC is the RX 6600 at $220. They go around $220 to $229. The lowest price it was Black Friday last year for $180. Those sales kind of dry up, but it is on sale. And as you can see, this is far more powerful than a 1070. As you could see, it's at 100%, and a 1070 is 25% slower, and a 1060 is way down, 50% slower, almost 43% slower. So if you are needing an upgrade and you want to upgrade your PC, I would recommend the RX 6600, right? That's a recommendation there if you really need a cheap, good GPU to replace your 1080p GPUs. I think given that it wasn't mentioned, I think it would make sense for 1080p medium settings. High settings, 1080p 60 FPS looks pretty demanding because they're running with the 6700 XT, so that's going to take a lot of rasterization. So we don't know how much things turn on, if it's just going to be a very demanding few settings that you could tweak to medium and then you get nearly the same visual quality. Again, I hope this video was helpful to you. I hope I was able to inform you of what you need and the features that it's coming with. Again, check out the PlayStation blog yourself to see the articles. Check out WCCF Tech, and you could check out Steam for more information. I hope you all have a good day and have a nice one.